administration to live it out for yourself and see that, well, shoot, you're still making the money subject to interest. So what we ultimately are doing when I at least assert that approved one solution, one and one only solution 43 years ago, and I mean that expression one and one only was a expression that in particular one of my greatest math teachers ever used regularly whenever they proved anything. Inevitably they used the terms one, or expression one and one only, explicitly, because a proof can't exist without that. Now, unless it's a proof of facts, of multiple disparate possible facts or combinations of facts. But there is no proof of an alternate solution, monetary solution, because the one and one only solution to inflation, deflation, and maladisposition is elementary and obvious. Deviate from the obligatory schedule of payment an iota, and you don't have a solution. It's only what you're trying to accomplish by a gargantuan, bureaucracy, which is entirely redundant and imposes further costs upon you. You do pay the costs via inflation and deflation. You do suffer injustice every moment. The situation is not in perfect adjustment, which is accomplished automatically by the schedule of payment implemented by mere software in the accounting system of a common monetary foundry that I propose in Mathematically Perfected Economy. And it's a funny thing that people such as Ellen Hodgson Brown, who just 2 years ago denied that interest was even a problem, are now joining in this chorus who's uniformly asking for a money which just is divorced from this need from interest, because no one can explain it in any other terms but this, proof of inevitable failure, which I introduced in 1968, published in 1979, and have been the only advocate of until recently. Ellen Hodgson Brown was opposed to it. Bill Stills produced a video with all these people who were advocates of interest. And as I was getting to say, a funny thing about, Austrian economists is rather than justify interest, there's a fellow named Baum Baywerk who I refer to in some of the footnotes in my, and links to his work in some of my papers online. And he's the only ostensible justification of interest that I find in Austrian economics. And basically he spends something like 4, 5, 6 chapters of a book, the introductory chapters, building a case for interest, which case exists only of building up an idea of over several paragraphs that the only resistance to the idea of interest exists in religious sentimentality. In other words, there is no math, there is no analysis of the inherent ramifications of interest. He simply spends 5 or 6 chapters in the late 1800s building a case that the only thing wrong with it is religious sentimentality. In other words, there is no justification whatsoever, and the only persistence, of course, exists by continual evasion of the ramifications, insisting that, in the case of Hayek, that what's not federal money is federal money, and it's all the causes of all the problems which could be solved, and we'll never have an honest money unless we do solve them by resorting instead to private money, which is the very private money, and the same principles and all, which he's objecting to. These people are just, excuse me, they're utterly stupid. And and the price of this is 10,000 homes a day going into foreclosure in the United States, and 125,000 children under the age of 12 homeless on the streets of Los Angeles.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah. So
okay.
What I was hoping that is that being as you'd expressed this idea that you weren't really committed to anything as monetary reform, that, given a presentation of, why there is one and one only solution, it's existed for, for so long, by disproving all these contending theories, which I spent an awful lot of time at, you might, being as, what you're involved in, that we might hopefully, unite on an idea of excuse me, singular solution, and that, given our skills and dispositions and the fact that you're dedicated to, solving these things, what do you want to do now? Do you want to, go to universities and show people how what the only way we're going to get out of here is, or on the contrary, you leave yourself in a situation where you're advocating that this knowledge of banking, this study that these people are taking up at their own cost, is going to be useful someday, when in fact it has no use whatsoever, and really is our problem.
Yeah. Well, what there's a couple of things which just really need clarification. Firstly, so you're advocating that you need to make all debt repayment legally enforceable,
right?
And how do you actually do that? Because things never go. I mean, you're talking about business people know what they need. Well, no, they don't. My experience of business people is that 9 out of 10 business people don't have a clue what they need. And most entrepreneurs are pretty bad at it, because business is a hard game.
Well,
so when things go, when things go wrong, which all 9 out of 10 businesses do go wrong, how is that enforceable?
Okay, first of all, I would agree that there may be some room for serving such businesses which somehow, for their own deficiencies, are bound to shoot themselves in the foot somehow, are bound to go awry. I would agree that there's some room to work with them as a consultant, showing them how to more efficiently do whatever to avoid mistakes they may be making. And in some of these things will still occur under mathematically perfected economy, because you still got the guy who might, for instance, build a machine from
it's not a minor amount. It's the majority. Almost all businesses fail.
Well, yes, but I assert, and I have extensive experience in this myself from the other end. That is, I'm an author of a software technology, cooperative, resumable technology, which had earning capabilities of multiple billions of dollars annually, which preserves, which makes any process and computer capable of simultaneously operating on the same data without any contention, guarantees that the processes will even succeed, even despite catastrophic failure of the operating environment.
Well, I'm not sure if you.
Well, here's the thing: you have just ridiculous earning potential, and yet anyone who I am actually in contact with diverse development efforts to engage in free enterprise, what we call be an entrepreneur, and typically rather than a financiers or a banking system actually helping a business, I'm not denying that everyone knows how to run a business as efficiently as necessary, but I'm certainly denying that the present financial system contributes to their betterment. First of all, it's impossible to certify creditworthiness because even given any conditions today, the inherent irreversible multiplication of the sum of artificial indebtedness, which is never accounted for in any attempt to certify creditworthiness, eventually makes it impossible for all of us to service our debts, in which case we are dispossessed of all of our production to entities which produce nothing. That's not to our benefit. And by imposing that, they're certainly not helping us. Now they might show us how they might help us in regard to their obfuscation to deal with them, but that's irrelevant because they're the imposers of the problem, you see, which doesn't exist once we solve all these issues. Now, so what I'm saying is, here's the thing that happens in real life, is you have a brilliant idea, deserves to succeed above an entire arena of endeavor.
Yeah,
Yet,
but I think my experience of business is it's nothing to do with the ideas; it's everything to do with implementation. In practical terms, business is not about ideas. The best idea is not what wins in business; it's those who can structure a system to get it to market.
Well, let's stop right there because the best idea certainly won't win when it is subject to a financial system, which means this. It's not financial at all. It's about exploitation. Now, a typical thing that happens out there, and I can describe in detail just myriads of situations where this is the only thing that's ever bound to happen. I mean, practically everything I hear about is subject to these same techniques of exploitation. First of all, you promise that financing is forthcoming. What happened to get to that point is somebody might have helped you in some way and said, okay, look, you have to have a business plan, and this has how a business plan has to be written up. Now, this person has actually gone through and produced this thing. They've produced prototypes. They've proven them. They've patented them. They are familiar with production processes. A banker can't tell them how to produce anything more efficiently. Anybody who has anything less only has half of an idea, and I got a feeling that those are the people that you're relating to. Now, what happens in the case of the guy who's got his T's crossed and I's dotted, who's really the only worthy candidate for succeeding in private enterprise, is that in this arena in which they're deprived of, financially deprived, these people who are the very people who deprive them of that opportunity to succeed come as if they're the only saviors and that they are absolutely vital to this process. And they decide how much a piece they want of the resultant enterprise. All right?
Well, yeah, but a lot of it isn't really, I know we're talking about banks, but all the businesses that I know, they get their money from private finance, who other business people lending some of their profits or returns from their success. As opposed, I just don't know. In my circle, I don't know many people that actually borrowed the money from the bank. Now I know. What I'm trying to get at here is that is the model dependent upon the money having to be repaid?
Oh yes,
So what happens if they can't repay?
Well, let's describe a situation. You make 20 payments against a $100,000 house under not linear rates of depreciation, but the descaled rates of depreciation that I suggested account for, what the real cost of periodic costs of a new thing versus, a practically entirely consumed thing should be. Well, the remaining value of the property always exists. We might require, and a society is welcome to protect itself in any way that it deems necessary, but it's far less necessary because there's far less impetus for failure, and because there's far more likeliness that a person succeeds. Pardon?
Is there a requirement that they take out there's an insurance market.
Well, what we might do, for instance, is require